You don't want your employees to be idle, so why would you want your robots to be idle? Zebra Technologies is addressing idle robots by bringing their latest solution to the market, which requires 30% fewer robots, resulting in increased asset utilization and a cost-effective entry to automation for your fulfillment operations. The Zebra Symmetry fulfillment ecosystem is bringing you balanced utilization, more cubic capacity, and optimized pick paths so you can operate at peak performance. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Learn more at zebra.com or click the link in the show notes.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Alex Bilyan, who is the Chief Sales Officer at WorkScore.ai. We're also going to be joined here by Rado Barss, who is the co-founder and CEO of WorkScore.ai as well. And they are bringing a new way to score your workers, essentially, and evaluate employees within the warehouse space and addressing some of the challenges that you would typically face as a leader in a warehouse operation when it comes to those evaluations. And so I'm very interested as a former leader in a warehouse to see how they're doing this and hear about how the solution works overall. So Alex and Rado, welcome to the show. How are you both?
We're doing great. It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting us. And I'm excited to talk about it. I think our product will be interesting to a lot of people listening to this podcast, and we'll definitely be touching up on some pains that are very familiar to a lot of warehouse owners and workers as well. So yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. This opportunity is very important for each startup. Thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. And happy to get you guys on. As I mentioned, former warehouse manager, so I definitely had to do some employee evaluations back in my days. So very interested to hear how you guys are addressing this. So why don't you kind of kick us off here and tell us a little bit about WorkScore AI, what it's all about, and tell us too, because I think this is a fairly new company. So tell us a little bit about how it got started as well, and what was kind of the trigger moment to say like, oh, we need to address this problem.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off with a small origin story.
Sure.
So it was originally Rado's idea because he's the one who has the most experience in our team working in warehouses. So he was initially working in a warehouse in Dubai. Then he moved to Canada. He worked in 3 different warehouses here. And he also has experience working in different e-commerce platforms. So cumulatively, I would say 5-6 years of experience, right? And yeah, one thing that he noticed in all of these warehouses, regardless of whether it's here or in Dubai or what kind of a warehouse it is that they're all losing a pretty big chunk of money due to their employees' performance. And it ultimately boils down to 3 main points that I would say are recurring issues in all of these warehouses. And which our research later on showed that it's universally relevant to all warehouses. First is a lack of transparency when it comes to the employees' performance. So what I mean by this is that the workers' performance is not really visible for the workers themselves and the warehouse supervisors or the managers or whoever is responsible for evaluating them, which is causing a lot of demotivation. Because if you as a worker are working in an environment where there's 400 other people working with you, and you know for a fact that your hard work is not going to be visible to your manager or to your supervisor, it's really hard to stay motivated and actually try to, put in the work, especially if you see that other people are not doing that and you are still being paid the same rate as them.
Mm.
Another major issue was that because of the same lack of transparency, it was very difficult for the workers to improve on their mistakes, because oftentimes the managers would omit these mistakes. They would not see. And again, this is especially true for bigger warehouses. Like obviously, if you have a small warehouse where there's only 5 employees, it's a different picture because you know everyone. But in bigger environments, it's very difficult to spot and see what exactly each person is doing wrong, because you can have 2 people, you can have 2 workers who are both underperforming or who are not doing as well, but their mistakes might be in completely different things. For one person, it might be, just using the warehouse management system. Maybe they're making mistakes there. For the other person, it might simply be the route optimization issue. So just them taking a more optimal route when they're doing the picking. So there can be different issues. And the fact that you do not have a clear picture of what each person is doing wrong makes it difficult to address these issues and actually help these employees to improve their performance. And lastly, I would say the third big point is overstaff. In all of these warehouses, people just eyeball when it comes to estimating how much labor do you need to complete a certain number of tasks. So just to put this into an example, let's say you need to do 100 tasks, like 100 items need to be picked up, and you may eyeball that you need 30 employees for this. But if you were to have some tool or some objective way of knowing how each employee is performing, you would be able to assign a specific number, and this number may be 20. So maybe you're assigning 10 more employees to do this work when it's not necessary. So all of these issues combined were causing, so one of these warehouses, which I will not disclose the name just for privacy issues, and they were losing around 130,000 US dollars a month. And this is a very big chunk of money, right? If you can save this, you obviously will. So about WorkScore.ai, the product itself. So what we do, I'll explain very simply. We take 2 type of data on the employees. It's their movement data and their action data. And we're feeding this into our AI module, which is objectively evaluating their performance and giving them a work score, which is where the name comes from. And on top of that, it doesn't just give you the score, it also gives you a breakdown of the efficiency indicators that you're being analyzed upon, so that you can see what exactly you're doing well and what are your strengths and also your weaknesses, so that you can know as an employee, what you should improve on to bring your score up.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And, obviously it certainly is a big problem. And I love that, Rado is, taking this problem and creating a solution from what he saw firsthand, working in these warehouses. And, it is certainly something where, the employees, like there's still, even though there's so much talk about automation and robotics and things like that in the warehouse, there's still so much of a prevalent human element in the warehouse. It's kind of, you need to have humans in there in probably like 95% of scenarios within a warehouse environment. And each human, in a sense, is different, right? Some are more productive, some are less productive. And I think the warehouse industry and an environment naturally, has a high turnover rate as well, right? So you have people that are just kind of coming in real quick, don't necessarily care about the work as much, just trying to pick up some extra money maybe, or, they know that they're only going to be there for a month or 2 months during the peak season or the holiday. And, why are they going to be super productive, right? And I think, there's another factor in there too, where it's, most places, I know I'm in New Jersey here, and we're like densely populated with warehouses, and a warehouse worker can kind of just go to the warehouse next door and probably pick up a job if they lose their one job, right? And, there's always like a hunger for more workers. So, there's certainly a challenge there in trying to like figure out what to do and, how to, I think objectively, as you mentioned in there, kind of measure their performance. But I'm curious, what kind of metrics as you did further research on this? And obviously Rado's, been in the warehouse himself. So, but, what kind of metrics really did you find were, super important to these warehouse operators, and what were they kind of struggling to measure and understand about the employees so that they could kind of take some action on these things? And like you mentioned, I mean, losing $130,000 a month is a lot, right? I mean, you could get like a high level leader for that type of money within a year, right? Let alone a month. So tell us a little bit about, I mean, as you're exploring this and understanding, what were those kind of metrics that were missing that, you're trying to fill in and now measure?
Yeah, so I mean, there are so many metrics that you can measure. Like I can share a source that shares 15 different metrics, and we were trying to analyze and see which ones would be the most important for us and to addressing these issues. And the main three for us are picking accuracy, or in other words, just basically how accurately they're completing tasks and how little mistakes they're making. The order fulfillment rate, which is basically the speed and how quickly they're able to complete these tasks. And lastly, it's attendance and punctuality, which refers to not only their ability to come into work in time and not leave early, but also their attendance to their assigned and respective work zone. So for us, the way we work specifically when gathering movement data, so in our system, when we're mapping the warehouse, we split it into different work zones because you have your leisure zone. You might have a zone for specific tasks for a certain amount of employees, and there all of the tasks that they complete is within this zone. Again, this is more relevant to larger warehouses. And we also track how much time they spend in their respective work zone. And you might have someone who's spending time in a zone of the warehouse where they don't have any tasks, so obviously they shouldn't be there during their working hours for no reason. And yeah, we found that these metrics were the most important ones. The main issue, I would say, is that there are some alternative tools, right? It's not like there are absolutely no tools for evaluations at all. However, here's the main distinction that makes WorkScore.ai stand out. So these tools are for measuring processes. WorkScore.ai is for measuring the employees themselves. So what I mean by this is there are tools that can show you how well did this employee complete this task today, for example. So how quickly did he complete this task compared to others? Or let's say there's a specific task and you can see which employee completed this task the best, okay, time-wise, or something else like accuracy-wise. However, you cannot really have a holistic picture of the employee himself with any of these tools. Because let's say you have Steven, a warehouse employee, and he comes into work and that day, he didn't sleep well. Like he had some, I don't know, issues outside of work, like in his personal life. Like maybe he couldn't sleep the whole night because his baby was crying, and now he's feeling very tired. Like he wasn't able to do his best that day. So if you're using these alternative tools, you might open up a list and you see Steven at the bottom of the list, and you might falsely conclude that, oh, Steven is not a good employee. What is this? I have people that are doing 70% more work than him today on this task. But is that really the true picture? I mean, you would need data on Steven's performance throughout like at least months to have a clear idea of whether this person is doing well or not, whether this person is actually putting in the work. Maybe every single other day that Steven comes into work, he is performing well. So it's these minor things that can skew the numbers, that can create a false picture that we're trying to avoid. And in this, we're really on the employee side because we're trying to help them, first off, get the recognition that they deserve. And second, to make their work visible and transparent for their supervisors so that they don't have to be worried about, I worked so hard these past couple of months, but there's 500 other people in this warehouse. Did anyone even really notice my work? Like, did it even make a difference? Or, oh, I think my supervisor is a little biased toward me, or my team leader is a little biased toward me. I think there's other people that he's friends with. So maybe in his evaluations, even though I'm working the most in his evaluations, maybe he didn't, write me up as a good worker just because he's biased. So we're helping the workers be at peace, knowing that these are not things that they have to be concerned about anymore, because everything is clear, everything is transparent. Hey, you're doing your work, boom, you have your score. If you're wondering why it's low or why it's high, you have the breakdown, a very detailed outline of what exactly you're doing well, what exactly you need to work on. And it just makes everything easier for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's such great examples there, and I certainly resonate with a lot of those. I've had a lot of those conversations with employees in my career too as well, and I think it is challenging sometimes. Like you said, there's when you have a ton of employees, right, and you're trying to measure them all and understand who's being productive and who's not. I mean, it becomes the numbers essentially, right? And you're not thinking about like some of these external factors, like our friend Steven you mentioned there, that just had a newborn and it's not getting as much sleep and maybe dragging a little less at work or something like that. And I think understanding that, I think, is super important to be able to build something like this to address that in a sense. So I guess tell us a little bit about how it actually works, right? I mean, so where are you taking inputs from? Where are you getting this data from? And then how is it kind of all coming together to essentially create this score? And then what does that score mean at the end of the day?
Our product has come a long way in terms of the technology, because we have made some adjustments. And as you yourself mentioned before, initially we're utilizing these bracelets and Bluetooth beacons that we would install within the warehouse to
Okay.
actually track and see the movements of the employees. However, with our IT team recently, we have made, I would say, a huge improvement in that sense, because this technology with the Bluetooth beacons, it was very expensive, especially when it comes to bigger warehouses, because you have to install a bunch of them and they're pretty costly. The bracelets themselves were not really an issue, but still having something on you, it can still cause some friction. Maybe someone forgets to put on their bracelet, or like forgets to put on their bracelet. You never know. So we came up with an alternative, which is much better and does not require any hardware to track people's movements. And now we're able to do that through the cameras within the warehouse.
Okay.
And what we do is we have a number assigned for each employee. This is what we do currently in the warehouses where we have our pilot program. So on their uniform, each employee has a number that they're identified by. And through cameras, our AI software is able to accurately track their movements through the warehouse. And this technology has a lot of potential, because in the future, we're also aiming to not only use the cameras for the movements themselves, but also to see their actions. So actually completion of the task. So how they pick an item, like all of that is being recorded through the camera and analyzed through the AI software. Because right now, the way we gather information on what I mentioned before as action data, we do that through the warehouse management system. So every single button press on the device, every single scan of an item, so all of that is being gathered, logging in the task, pressing the completion of the task. So at every single step of completing the task, we gather this information. And then two of these sources, which are separate, are fed into our AI module, which is able to match the movements to the tasks. Because through warehouse management system, you can also see what tasks each person is assigned. So you're able to match the movement to the actions, and you're able to see, or I guess the AI is able to analyze and see how efficient it is. So whether your movement route is efficient for completing those tasks, whether it's quick, whether it's slow, whether there were some objects maybe on your way, that we're hindering your movement, like that too, through our mapping system, we're able to detect, and the AI is able to take into account for that too. And yeah, that's essentially how it works. So it's these two separate sources of the data, but the AI is able to match them together.
Interesting there. And so, it's taking, I guess, from the perspective, obviously there's, some data input, like you said, on the process or the task completion, right? That it's tracking, right? Which would be like, when you complete a pick line or, a package or something like that. But from the movement perspective, I'm curious about this, as you're tracking the movement, I mean, how does the AI interpret that movement? Like, what are you really tracking there, that they're having like less idle time, or what's the purpose of tracking the movement?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Have you heard of Nucor warehouse systems? Well, they should definitely be on your radar. Forge a connection with the Nucor warehouse systems team at ProMat 2025 and learn about their sustainability, safety, automation, and end-to-end storage solutions in booth S1056. That's booth S1056. And make sure to join us on a panel hosted by Nucor Warehouse Systems on Monday, March 17th at the Sustainability Transportation Theater, where I will be moderating a discussion on the process of recycling steel and how companies can reach sustainability goals within the warehouse. We will see you in Chicago.
So the main purpose is idle time is also being taken into account, though it's not really a major factor. I would say it is only a major factor for few select employees that do try to, slack off and avoid work. But other than that, I would say for most people, that's not really the main factor. One thing that we do is route optimization. So making sure that you do take the best possible route to complete your tasks. And if this is not the case, the software will actually try to guide you toward this. And, in the breakdown, you will be able to see this detailed out that, oh, you took this route while you could have done this, and this would have saved you time. So this is one thing. Second is, as I mentioned, spending time within your respective work zone during your working hours. So this is another big factor, because in our pilot programs, we would sometimes have cases. So after we gathered that data, we saw that some people were spending a lot of time outside of their work zone, actually, where they did not really have any tasks or anything else to do. And yeah, those are the two main things. And this data obviously has the most value only after it's matched to the tasks. That's why I was saying these two work together, even though they're completely distinct sources. We mesh them together to see how the movement and the task completion work together.
Interesting. Yeah. I was curious about that, and I'm curious too. I mean, as you're tracking these employees, I mean, obviously there's been a ton of discussion over the last several years as more of this technology has come in to place, not only in the warehouse but in the workplace and in general, of how much is too much to be tracking, right? I mean, I think there was an article a while back about Amazon tracking the amount of time that employees are spending in the bathroom or something, right? And there was a lot of controversy about that. So I mean, how do you kind of address some of that? Because you mentioned you're tracking through the cameras, and they're wearing a number in a sense, and that's how you're identifying who this worker is. I mean, how do you kind of address some of those concerns from the employee perspective, whether it's from Big Brother is watching me, or just for a privacy feeling overall? I mean, how do you address that, and how do you make sure you're not crossing any lines there, I guess, in a sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's something that we've been dealing with since day one. That's one of the biggest, I would say, I don't want to say challenges, but one of the biggest things that we had to always keep in mind. And what I'll say is, we are on the employee side. So I would say WorkScore.ai is primarily a software for the employees themselves. Like we are made for the benefit of the employees. So we've taken steps to ensure that workers' privacy is in place and we don't cross any lines, and that the software works for the benefit of the employees. And the first thing we did was initially, so you know how credit score works, right? So
Yeah.
when you go to a financial institution, they can see your score, but they can't really see any of the details. So let's say if you have a very low credit score, you go to a bank, they cannot really see why exactly your credit score is low. Like they can't see, oh, you missed the payment on your, let's say, car, or your mortgage, which is why your credit score is going down. So it's pretty much a similar thing that we did with WorkScore.ai. So your warehouse supervisor or manager or whoever is on the management side of things, they will be able to see each employee's score, but they will not be able to actually see the details on why their score is low or high. So these details, they're only accessible to the employees themselves so that they know what they're not doing well and they can improve on these things. But the employer or the manager cannot just look at Bob's or Steven's data and be like, oh, why did you spend 17 minutes in the washroom when you were supposed to spend only 7,
Yeah.
So we're definitely trying to avoid this. And you yourself mentioned how retaining employees is a huge challenge for a lot of warehouses, and we're trying to help with this. We're making sure that we're not adding stress to the employees' lives, and we're doing the opposite, and we're trying to motivate them to stay and feel appreciated. So the second thing is, in one of our pilot programs, we've implemented this gamification in a sense. So we've implemented bonuses based on the performance. And after this one small change, the number of people that were opposed to being tracked went to virtually zero. So we had basically no people who were opposing it, because people were thinking, okay, if I'm being tracked on my performance, and if they can only see my score, and I will be actually rewarded for my work, which I wasn't before, then why would I not want to be tracked? Why would I not want to be getting, cash bonuses for my hard work? And that's what we did. We kind of set this, so basically like top 20% of performance at the end of the month would be getting a cash bonus. And this both drove the performance of the workers up, all of the performers. And it also, as I said, led to the reduction of, I guess, opposition or rebels.
Money
and
talks.
It just all lies in the way you implement it. I think the warehouse supervisors and warehouse owners, they all have a lot of flexibility with the tool, and it's essentially up to them to treat the employees well. And I think because we've talked to very, very many warehouse representatives and warehouse owners, we've gone to a lot of events, and they all understand very well the importance of actually treating your employees well and making sure that they're recognized for their efforts. They all know that, the method of whipping them and, just trying to be super strict, it just doesn't work out, because employees end up leaving. Like they don't end up working better. And this is also supported by research. And this is just one of the basic human needs, being recognized and being appreciated. This is something that doesn't even have to be based on cash, or doesn't have to be a monetary incentive. Even just having something like an employee of the month, it makes people feel so much more appreciated, and this makes them feel fulfilled at their work. They're able to perform better, and they're able to perform knowing that what they're doing is actually, first off, making an impact, and second off, there's visibility to it. Like if you are doing better than the other 550 workers, you will have the highest score amongst those 550 workers. So this really makes a huge difference, and we see that in our current pilot program. So we're actually excited to bring this into more warehouses. And if you can do something that will help both the workers feel better and be more incentivized to work hard, and on top of that, help the warehouses save money, why not do it?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting there too, the incentivization of it. And I think that's such a big factor in, helping to, create a better work environment, and certainly one where, people, earlier in the conversation you mentioned there, like, I've been working hard, I've been doing this, and, does anybody even see it? Right. And like when you start to bring in that incentivization, I think that helps there. So I wanted to go back there a second, because I wanted to get some clarification on this. So you mentioned that the data itself is visible to the employee, but not the employer, right? So from the employer perspective, if I'm the manager in that warehouse or whatever the case may be, I mean, what do I see like with WorkScore? I mean, do I just see the score, or how do I understand like what's going on with my employees, and what's the value there for me?
The way we set it up in our pilot programs right now, there's obviously a lot of flexibility depending
Mm-hmm.
on what our customer demands from us. So, you're the one paying for the tool. We will set it up for you however you see fit. So for our pilot programs, again, for the privacy concerns, we set it up in a way that the management side, they can only see the scores of the employees, while the employees themselves on their end can see all the details and the breakdown of the different efficiency indicators. However, if the employers want to see more data, they can request access for it, and they're requesting this access from the employee himself. So
Mm-hmm.
on the employee's end, you get a notification, or your manager wants to see your details. If you want to share this, you share that. So from our experience, when this mostly happens is, let's say if you have a new employee who is not able to utilize the warehouse management system well, and they're making a lot of mistakes. So for them, what they can do is, they can go up to their manager, and they themselves can just ask for assistance. They can say, I have this issue. In case of our pilots, it was more like, my score is low for this. I don't understand why. I think I'm making some mistakes somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they can share their data with their manager, and they can together collaborate and understand what's wrong. And after the access is given, the employer or the manager can see all this data too on the worker. But
Got it.
obviously, again, this is all very flexible. So if one of our customers asks us to, oh, I want to have access to this data all the time,
Mm-hmm.
we do inform them of the privacy concerns that might arise on the worker's end. And even though there are no legal issues with this, because again, we're only gathering information on their performance and we're not gathering any personal data, we still inform them that, we have experience with these pilots.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows that it works better both for the workers and for you when we set it up this way, where you can only see the score, and we set up this access system where you
Yeah.
actually have to request the worker to share this data. But again, at the end of the day, it's up to them. If they know their workers well, if they think it's not going to cause any issues, be our guest.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like that it requests from the employee, like, do they want to share this? Because you certainly, for whatever reason, you get employees that, they feel different ways, and, some don't care whether you have that visibility or not, and some, do care. And so I think, having that option, I think kind of level sets and creates a, comfort level for everybody. So very interesting stuff with you here, and learning about WorkScore. And I think, definitely, certainly a challenge that I've experienced in my own career. And I think it's interesting how you're going about addressing it. So you guys recently won 2 pitch competitions as well. Obviously this is an evolving solution, as you mentioned, going from the wearable now to the cameras as well from that perspective. So tell us a little bit about, what the future of WorkScore AI looks like, and kind of what's coming up.
We're definitely evolving very quickly. I mean, we only started working on this project in the beginning of this year. So January will mark the first year of WorkScore AI, I guess, our first anniversary.
Mm.
And we've already come from just being a very good idea, I shall say, to having the MVP and pilot programs and winning 2 pitch competitions. And we've also already raised money, and we're trying to close our first pre-seed round. So I would say we're growing at a very rapid pace, and we have a very big project coming up that WorkScore.ai, I want to say, is ultimately going to evolve into. So I won't share too much of it, but the basic idea is that we're going to try to work with e-commerce platforms as well. And we're going to be this sort of mediator between warehouses and e-commerce platforms, and we're going to help them work better together. So I won't share the idea, but it's something very interesting, and it's, I think, the bigger picture that WorkScore.ai is going to be integrated puzzle piece in.
Very interesting. Yeah. I'm interested to see how that develops and how that evolves and how that's going to work too. I'm trying to picture that, but very interesting stuff with you here, both around WorkScore.ai, and appreciate you coming on the show and telling us about this new solution that you've developed. Very interested to see how it continues to evolve and grow over time. If people are interested in learning more about WorkScore.ai, what's the best way to do that?
Our website has our contact information, so we can always share the demo of the product. We can share how it works. So we're very open with that. And our LinkedIn, we keep it very up to date. So any accomplishments that we have, we always post about them so that the people see how our product evolves. But yeah, I would say I would highly encourage anyone that is interested in the product and wants to learn more about it to just contact us directly on our website, and yeah, we'll reach back immediately.
All right. Sounds good. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, and in the show notes so people can easily find it. So Alex and Rado, thank you very much for joining me today on the show.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.